Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
It sounds fake.
Could one of the most talked about royal birth stories have been packaged very differently from what the public was first led to believe? For years, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry presented Archie's birth as a story about privacy, protection, and pushing back against palace control. They made it seem like a personal family moment that the world had no right to enter, but the internet did not let it rest. Some people went way too far, spreading strange claims about the children being fake or AI, and that kind of talk needs to be handled carefully, not treated like fact. Still, beneath the wild noise, more serious questions have kept rising about the timeline, the hospital details, and the way the announcement was handled. And now Candace Owens has stepped into the middle of that storm. She is calling attention to what she believes are glaring contradictions in Meghan's pregnancy story, and her comments have pushed the debate into a whole new lane. These contradictions are not tiny details either. Critics point to Harry's own memoir, public reporting, and the strange confusion around the hospital timeline, saying the official version does not just feel unusual, it feels almost too clean, too rushed, and too hard to explain. 2 epidurals, a very fast hospital discharge, and conflicting reasons for why the press was not notified in the normal royal way all sit at the centre of the controversy. When you place those pieces together, the image stops looking like a smooth royal fairy tale. Instead, it starts to look like a messy web of questions that keeps getting harder for royal watchers to ignore. And here is the kicker. If even part of the public version does not hold up under scrutiny, then it raises a sharp question that people keep whispering about. What exactly was being protected?
This scandal comes as no surprise. Speculation about the children has been simmering for years.
I was instantly enraged from this 10-second clip. It just annoyed me. It doesn't make you sound like a better mom. It makes you sound like really kind of into yourself in a way.
And why? Because if these inconsistencies are real, then the public may not have just been kept at a distance. The trust between Meghan, Harry, and the millions who celebrated Archie's arrival may have been damaged from the very beginning. But before anyone jumps to the most extreme conclusions, the details need to be unpacked step by step, because what comes next may change the way this royal story is viewed forever. The timeline in Harry's own memoir may have revealed more than the couple expected. In his best-selling book, Harry recalls Meghan giving birth to Archie at the luxurious Portland hospital, where she supposedly had not 1, but 2 epidurals before leaving with their newborn within just a matter of hours. On the surface, it reads like a dramatic and glamorous account. It feels like the kind of story meant to show strength, control, and a couple doing things their own way. But when doctors, nurses, and experienced mothers began looking at that version more closely, the questions came in fast. The first major issue was the idea of 2 epidurals during labour. An epidural is not a casual painkiller someone pops in and out of. It involves placing a catheter near the spinal area to deliver pain relief, and changing or repeating that process during labour is not something treated lightly. That kind of situation can happen in certain cases, but critics argue it would usually require caution, extra checks, and close medical monitoring. So when the story presents it almost like a passing detail, people naturally start asking if the account was simplified, misunderstood, or shaped for drama.
Buckingham Palace is being pressured to remove Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet from the UK's royal line of succession until the Duchess provides absolute proof that she popped out both babies herself.
Then comes the second problem, and this is where the timeline really starts looking shaky. Harry's version appears to suggest that Meghan was back home, settled, and resting with Archie within around 2 hours. For many medical professionals and mothers, that sounded extremely difficult to believe. Most new mothers, especially those who receive pain management or go through anything beyond a basic delivery, are usually monitored for a longer period before being discharged. And here is where it gets even stranger. Portland Hospital is in central London, while Frogmore Cottage is not exactly a quick step outside the hospital doors. Between discharge paperwork, newborn checks, recovery after birth, security arrangements, and the drive home, the math becomes very tight. Even under the best possible scenario, the timeline feels rushed, polished, and suspiciously convenient. That leads to the obvious question: why tell a story that medical professionals and royal watchers could so easily pick apart? And if the timeline is inaccurate, what else in the carefully controlled narrative might also be misleading? Because as odd as Harry's account already sounds, the contradictions get deeper once the palace announcement enters the picture. Meghan's handling of the press is where the fuse really caught fire. Traditionally, when a royal baby is born, there is a strict and symbolic process. The monarch is informed, an official announcement is prepared, and the press is notified so the public can share in the historic moment. But when Archie arrived, those familiar rules seemed to disappear. Instead of a smooth royal announcement, the public got confusion.
Start twerking, because in her mind she was thinking, I'm going to release this later in a Netflix doc or release it later to show people how relatable I am. Otherwise, you can have a cute moment with your husband without recording it. Like, why would you record this for any reason? Why would you record this in the hospital?
Delays and mixed messaging. Meghan herself appeared to give different explanations for why the press was not alerted in the usual way. In one version, it was about protecting privacy. In another, it was linked to complications during the birth. Then another version seemed to shift the story again. So people asked the question loud and clear: if the truth was simple, why did the explanation keep changing? Even royal reporters who were used to palace secrecy admitted there was confusion around the timeline. Some journalists were told Archie had already been born hours earlier, while others received messages suggesting the Duchess was still in labour when she apparently was not. That kind of chaos does not just bend protocol, it makes the whole institution look sloppy, and that is not how royal birth announcements are usually handled. Palace protection officers, aides, and communications teams normally follow procedure very carefully. So when things move off script during a royal birth, people do not just shrug. They start wondering who made the decision, who approved it, and what the real reason was. Was this just confusion, or was it a deliberate attempt to control the public story around Archie's birth? That question has followed the Sussexes ever since, because the press situation was strange enough on its own. But the hospital details made everything even more intense. When Harry described Meghan receiving 2 epidurals during labour, medical professionals immediately raised eyebrows. For those unfamiliar, an epidural is not a quick injection. It is a delicate medical procedure where a catheter is carefully placed near the spinal area to provide continuous pain relief. Once that catheter is in place,
why have they simply not made an announcement to the fact that all of the speculation about the children's arrivals?
Doctors can usually adjust the dosage without removing everything and starting again. That is why critics say the claim of 2 epidurals does not sound simple at all. Switching catheters mid-labour is rare, risky, and usually done only under specific circumstances. Even then, that kind of procedure could extend recovery time and require careful monitoring afterward. Yet Harry's account makes it sound like this was just part of the normal flow of events. Critics argue that detail does not reflect how childbirth medicine usually works, and instead reads like a dramatised retelling. The confusion does not stop there. If Meghan truly underwent an additional invasive procedure, then the reported rapid recovery and same-day exit from Portland Hospital become even harder for critics to accept. The combination of multiple epidurals and a quick departure seems to clash with standard medical caution. Doctors usually watch for issues like low blood pressure, nerve irritation, infection, and other complications after delivery. To put it plainly, the story does not line up neatly with what many people understand about childbirth medicine, and that leaves one unsettling question hanging in the air. Was this simply a misunderstanding of medical terms, or was the narrative shaped to sound more extraordinary than it really was? Because with Meghan's pregnancy story, every small inconsistency seems to open the door to a much bigger debate. Childbirth is not something a person simply walks away from in a few hours. no matter how famous, wealthy, or protected the family may be. Standard medical practice usually involves careful observation after delivery, and even in uncomplicated cases, vital signs are monitored closely. Bleeding, blood pressure, pain levels, and the newborn's condition all have to be checked again and again before discharge is even seriously discussed. And if complications like preeclampsia are involved, which Meghan herself has suggested when speaking about maternal health, doctors normally would not treat that like some tiny issue. Preeclampsia is not a light problem. It can lead to seizures, organ damage, and dangerous spikes in blood pressure that can turn serious fast. Women who experience it are usually monitored carefully for a longer period, sometimes for days, depending on the case. So when Harry's memoir appears to describe Meghan giving birth, receiving multiple medical interventions, and then being back home in what feels like the length of a movie, people naturally started side-eyeing the whole timeline. That is not just unusual. To critics, it seems to go against what many obstetricians would describe as safe and responsible care after birth. Some medical voices looking at the public version have called the timeline reckless at best and hard to believe at worst. And this is where the contradiction gets even sharper. Meghan has often presented herself as a voice for maternal health, speaking about the importance of proper care, being heard, and protecting women during vulnerable moments. So, if the story about leaving so quickly after birth is true, critics argue it seems to clash with the very standards she publicly supports. And if it is not true, then the public may have been handed a clean, curated version of events that does not fully match reality. Either way, the narrative raises more questions than answers, and those questions only get louder once supposed insider accounts start creeping into the conversation. Behind the polished royal announcements and carefully managed headlines, whispers connected to Portland Hospital tell a much messier story. Anonymous voices have claimed there were odd details that did not fully line up with the glamorous version the public heard. One detail that raised eyebrows was Harry's claim about late-night food. Critics pointed out that even in a private hospital, patients are not usually ordering meals like they are sitting in a luxury hotel lobby at midnight. Yes, Portland Hospital is known for comfort, privacy, and high-end care, but some accounts suggest that Meghan's specific food cravings and the way Harry described them do not fully match what certain staff members remember from that period. Then comes another strange detail, the so-called secret elevator. Harry's memoir has been discussed for making the hospital movement sound almost cinematic, like they slipped in and out through some hidden royal escape route. But long-time employees and observers have pushed back on that picture. According to those claims, the hospital may be discreet and private, but there is no hidden system like the one some readers imagined from Harry's description. Instead, critics say the building works like any other high-end medical facility. There may be private corridors, controlled access, and careful security, but that is not the same as a secret passageway built for royal drama. Now, one small detail might not mean much on its own. A food order here, a hallway there, a timing issue somewhere else. But when those details start stacking up, the story begins to feel less solid. To critics, it starts looking less like a simple birth account and more like a version shaped for public consumption. A story made to feel dramatic, emotional, and controlled instead of plain and direct. Add in the quiet claims from a supposed hospital insider who said Meghan's stay was less dramatic than portrayed, and the official timeline feels even more fragile. Of course, these claims should be treated as allegations, not confirmed facts, but they keep spreading because the public version already has so many weak spots. Candace Owens has seized on these inconsistencies and pushed them right into the spotlight. Her argument is that when small details begin to fall apart, people have every right to question the bigger claims too. Was the royal couple simply embellishing to make the story sound more emotional? Was it a misunderstanding of medical language, hospital routine, and royal protocol? Or was there a more deliberate attempt to control every piece of the narrative, right down to the food, the hallway, and the timing? Whatever the answer, Each questionable detail pushes the public further from trust and closer to suspicion, and that suspicion gets even sharper when the bigger question walks into the room. Why were these details included in the first place? Why mention 2 epidurals, a same-day discharge, and such a tight timeline if those details were going to invite doctors, nurses, reporters, and royal watchers to pick the story apart? Were they misunderstandings, exaggerations, or something more intentional? By now, the inconsistencies are not just sitting quietly in the background. They are demanding an explanation. If the timeline does not add up, if the hospital details do not check out, and if supposed insiders keep challenging the official version, then people are left staring at one uncomfortable question. Why? Why would Meghan and Harry feel the need to reshape, dramatize, or possibly embellish something as personal as the birth of their child? Some people believe it was all about control. They wanted to own the narrative in a royal system where privacy is almost impossible to protect. Others believe it was about sympathy, a way of presenting Meghan as a woman facing extreme pressure while trying to protect her peace, her baby, and her marriage from a media machine that never stops. Then there are those who believe the secrecy was not really about Meghan alone. They argue it may have been about protecting the monarchy from uncomfortable questions, messy optics, or details the institution did not want dragged into the public eye. And that is where the controversy gets even deeper. Because royal births are not ordinary family moments. They are tied to tradition, succession, public trust, and the image of the crown itself. So, when the public hears different versions, delayed announcements, medical details that sound confusing, and palace messaging that does not feel clean, people do not just shrug it off. They start wondering who knew what, who approved what, and who benefited from the confusion. That is the problem with a story like this. Once the timeline starts bending, people begin checking every sentence, every interview, every memoir quote, and every old headline like detectives looking for the missing piece. And the more people look, the more the suspicion grows. Not because every rumour is automatically true, but because the official version has never felt fully settled for many royal watchers. Whatever the reason, the contradictions created one major unintended consequence. Instead of silencing critics, they gave skeptics even more material to work with. Every shifted detail, every blurred timeline, every confusing explanation adds another layer to the perception that the public was not given the full story. And once public trust starts cracking, rebuilding it becomes almost impossible. Candace Owens' criticism taps directly into that mistrust. She did not create all of these doubts from nowhere. She amplified questions that were already moving through royal circles, online forums, comment sections, and private conversations for years. Because if a royal couple cannot be clear about something as important as a birth announcement, critics ask, what else might be shaped for public image? Was this a calculated PR move? A messy chain of half-truths? Or simply 2 people telling their story in a way that made sense to them but sounded strange to everyone else? The result is the same. People are questioning the integrity of the entire story. And that brings us to the final reckoning, the contradictions, the consequences, and what this means for Meghan and Harry's credibility moving forward. So there it is. From memoir confusion to hospital questions, Meghan's pregnancy story remains packed with details that critics say simply do not line up. Whether you believe this was sloppy storytelling, emotional exaggeration, or something more carefully crafted, one thing is clear: the truth still feels buried under layers of confusion. Candace Owens may have stirred the pot, but her commentary has placed a spotlight on questions many people have whispered for years. The details do not match cleanly, the timelines clash, and every new explanation seems to open the door to even more suspicion. But here is the kicker. This is not the only part of Meghan's story that has people raising eyebrows. If you thought the pregnancy timeline was wild, wait until you hear about the age controversy. Thomas Markle has made claims that critics say could change how people look at Meghan's public image, her past, and the story she built around herself. That next deep dive connects directly with everything uncovered today, Because once people start questioning one timeline, they begin looking at every other timeline too. So before you click away, make sure you hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more royal breakdowns. Tell us what you think. Was this just confusion, or was the public given a story that was too polished to fully trust? Keep watching, stay sharp, and keep questioning the headlines, because this royal rabbit hole is only getting deeper.